"You're the first man who didn't hurt me," she said. The rancher took her in. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows over the dusty road that led to the ranch. She walked slowly, her steps uncertain, carrying nothing but a small bag with a few belongings. Each step seemed heavier than the last, weighed down not only by the physical load of her bag, but by the invisible weight of her past. She had come from a life filled with disappointment, fear, and distrust. Meeting people had always been a gamble, and every encounter until now had left her bruised in some way, not just on the body, but in the heart. Every smile from strangers had felt like a trap, every gesture of kindness suspect. The world outside had taught her to be wary, to protect herself, and to expect the worst. As she approached the ranch, a sense of nervous anticipation mixed with hesitation. The buildings were spread across a wide expanse of land, simple wooden structures with weathered paint and neatly tended fields. Smoke drifted lazily from the chimney of the main house, promising warmth and shelter, yet she hesitated at the edge of the yard. Her instincts screamed that this might be another place where she could get hurt. She paused, glancing around as if to confirm the absence of danger, though the land seemed peaceful and quiet. Birds chirped from the trees, and the wind whispered softly through the tall grass, but the noise of the world outside still lingered in her mind like a distant storm. The rancher appeared without a sound, emerging from behind the barn. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and kind eyes, the kind of person whose presence could fill a room with calm without saying a word. He looked at her for a moment, as if assessing not her bag or her appearance, but her spirit. She instinctively stepped back, bracing herself, but the rancher did not move forward aggressively. Instead, he offered a gentle smile and a nod, his eyes conveying patience rather than judgment. "You look tired," he said softly, his voice low and steady. "You're welcome to rest here if you need." She hesitated. Words like that had meant nothing before. Often they had led to promises broken or danger hidden. She had learned to smile politely, to nod, and to move on quickly, never trusting anyone. Yet something about this man, perhaps the calmness in his voice or the way he waited without pressuring her, made her pause. Maybe, just maybe, this could be different. I don't want to cause trouble," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You won't," he replied. "You don't have to, just come in." Her steps were tentative as she followed him toward the main house. The ground beneath her boots was uneven, and she kept her eyes down, studying the cracks and stones rather than the man beside her. She was not used to walking beside someone without fear of sudden anger or hidden intentions. Each step was a silent test. He didn't push her, he didn't touch her, he simply walked alongside, giving her space while guiding her toward safety. The interior of the house was warm, the wooden floors creaking softly under her weight. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke and freshly baked bread. Small, careful touches of comfort were everywhere, a soft rug near the fireplace, a few chairs arranged neatly, and a table set with simple dishes. She allowed herself to glance around, noting the lack of clutter or chaos. For a fleeting moment, she felt a pang of disbelief. Could a place like this really exist? A place that was quiet, orderly, and safe. The rancher led her to a small room at the back of the house. It had a bed, a simple dresser, and a window that looked out over the fields. He gestured toward it. "You can stay here, take your time. Make yourself comfortable." She looked at him, searching for any sign of deceit, but found none. Her chest tightened with emotion she had long suppressed, relief, disbelief, and a strange, tentative hope. She nodded silently and stepped inside the room, closing the door behind her. She set her bag down and sank onto the edge of the bed. The mattress was firm but inviting, the sheets clean and soft. She took a deep breath, trying to convince herself that this was real. The world had taught her to expect pain and disappointment, but here, for the first time in a long while, she felt something unfamiliar: safety. Hours passed, and she kept herself busy with small tasks around the room, tidying the dresser, arranging her few belongings and peering out the window at the sun setting over the fields. The light bathed everything in a golden glow, softening the edges of the day. Outside, she could hear the faint sounds of animals settling in for the evening, the lowing of cows, the rustle of the wind in the trees, the occasional bark of a dog. It was a simple, ordinary life, but it was life she had rarely been able to experience without fear. When evening came, the rancher returned with a plate of food. He set it down on the small table in her room and offered her a chair. "You should eat," he said simply. "You need your strength." She hesitated, staring at the plate. The food was basic but nourishing: bread, some stew, and a piece of fruit. She had not eaten a meal like this in weeks, not without suspicion that someone might take advantage of her vulnerability. And yet, here it was, offered without strings, without expectation. Slowly, she picked up a fork and began to eat. Each bite was a reminder that not everyone intended harm, that perhaps there could be people who simply cared. As the night deepened, the room grew quiet, and the rancher left her to rest. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying the events of the day. Fear and hesitation still lingered, but beneath them, a tiny spark of hope had taken root. She realized that surviving did not always mean fighting or fleeing. Sometimes it meant allowing herself to trust, even if only a little. Sleep came slowly, accompanied by dreams she hadn't dared to have in years, dreams of peace, of safety, of a place where she could exist without constantly guarding herself. She dreamed of the fields outside, of warm sunlight, and of a man who seemed to embody patience and understanding rather than fear and danger. Morning brought the soft light of dawn filtering through the window. She rose, cautiously optimistic, ready to see if the promise of yesterday could be carried into today. The rancher was already outside, tending to the animals, and he waved at her from a distance. There was no rush, no demand, just a gentle acknowledgement of her presence. She smiled slightly, something she had not done freely in a long time, and stepped out into the new day, uncertain but willing to try. The first day on the ranch became a turning point, not because anything extraordinary happened, but because it was ordinary in a way she had never known. She realized that trust could be built slowly, through small, consistent actions and a lack of pressure. She had arrived scared, expecting pain, but she had been met with patience, kindness, and safety. And in that, she began to understand that perhaps there could be more to life than just survival. Perhaps there could be peace, even for someone like her. By the time the sun set on the second day, she no longer felt like an intruder. She had begun to accept that this place, this man, might just be different. And though her heart was still cautious, she allowed herself the smallest whisper of gratitude, a feeling she had long thought impossible. For the first time in many years, she did not feel alone. The rancher never forced her to speak, never pried, never demanded more than she could give. He simply existed as a steady presence, a silent reassurance that not everyone would hurt her. And as the night wrapped the ranch in quiet darkness, she realized that perhaps this was where she was meant to begin again, not with grand gestures or sudden miracles, but with the slow, patient understanding that kindness could exist, and that sometimes the first step toward healing was simply being allowed to rest without fear. And for the first time, she whispered to herself, maybe I can stay here. The next morning, the ranch seemed even more alive than before. Sunlight spilled over the fields, glinting on the tall grass and the dew-covered fence posts. The woman stepped outside slowly, still cautious, but with a little more confidence than yesterday. She had slept better than she had in months, and though a part of her mind reminded her that trust could still bring pain, another part whispered that perhaps, for the first time, things might be different. The rancher was already busy in the barn, tending to the animals. The soft lowing of cows, the rustle of hay, and the occasional cluck of chickens created a rhythm that was comforting in its simplicity. He noticed her and waved, not insisting she come closer, just letting her know she was welcome. She returned the wave, feeling a small but important spark of connection. "You're up early," he said with a gentle smile as she approached. I couldn't sleep," she admitted softly. "That's okay," he replied. "Some mornings are like that, take your time." She hesitated, unsure if she should ask to help or simply observe. She had learned to keep herself quiet, invisible, hoping that staying unnoticed would keep her safe. But the rancher's patience made her curious. Perhaps she could be a part of this world, even if only in small ways. "Would you like to help feed the chickens?" he asked. She blinked at him, surprised by the offer. It was not a test, not a command, just a simple invitation. She nodded slowly, and together they walked toward the small chicken coop. The rancher handed her a small bucket of feed. She hesitated for a moment, then began scattering it carefully. The chickens pecked eagerly, clucking and flapping their wings, and she couldn't help but smile quietly. It felt ordinary, yet ordinary in a way she had never known could feel safe. The morning passed with small, simple tasks: gathering eggs, checking the fences, and feeding the animals. The rancher guided her gently, showing her how to do things without pressure or criticism. He explained everything patiently, never rushing, never demanding more than she could give. She began to notice the rhythm of ranch life, the way each small action connected to another, the way care for the animals and land created something meaningful. By midday, she felt her confidence growing. She spoke softly, asking questions about the animals and the chores, and the rancher answered with calm, steady patience. She realized that asking for help didn't have to be dangerous, that curiosity could exist without judgment. It was a simple but profound realization, something she had rarely experienced before. After the chores, they sat together on the porch, watching the sun begin its slow descent. The rancher handed her a cup of tea, and she took it cautiously, her fingers brushing against the warm cup. She sipped slowly, savoring the quiet moment, and realized that she was beginning to feel comfortable in this place. "You're settling in well," he said, his eyes kind. I think so," she replied, almost surprised by her own words. "I didn't expect this." "Sometimes things turn out differently than we expect," he said. "It's okay to let yourself be surprised." She nodded, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. It was not just the sun or the tea. It was the realization that someone could care without expecting anything in return. The feeling was foreign, almost uncomfortable in its gentleness, yet she welcomed it. Over the next few days, their routine became familiar. She rose early, helped with the animals, and learned small tasks around the ranch. The rancher never demanded perfection, never scolded her for mistakes. Instead, he showed her how to improve gently, offering guidance without judgment. She began to understand that mistakes were not punishable, that they could be learning moments rather than failures. In the evenings, they would sit together quietly, sometimes talking, sometimes not. She began to share small pieces of herself: the way she liked the smell of hay in the morning, the simple joy of watching a calf stumble on its first steps, the comfort of the quiet that stretched across the fields. Each revelation was cautious, each word measured, but each one built a bridge between her and the rancher. One afternoon, as they repaired a fence together, a sudden gust of wind blew across the field. She stumbled, almost losing her balance, and he reached out instinctively, steadying her. She froze for a moment, the old reflex of fear rising in her chest, but he only smiled and stepped back, giving her space. "See," he said softly, "nothing to be afraid of." She exhaled slowly, realizing that he wasn't going to harm her. That simple act, that small reassurance, felt monumental. It was the first time she had let someone be near her without flinching, without bracing for pain. And she realized that this was more than just safety. It was trust slowly being built, piece by piece. As the week passed, she began to notice changes in herself. She laughed quietly at small things: the playful antics of a young calf, the way the chickens crowded around for food, the soft hum of the wind in the trees. She began to talk more, ask questions, and even share a story or two from her past, carefully and selectively. She discovered that speaking did not always lead to harm, that words could be met with understanding rather than judgment. One evening, as the sky turned shades of pink and orange, she sat on the porch with the rancher, watching the sun dip below the horizon. She felt a sense of calm that had eluded her for years, a quiet assurance that she was allowed to exist without fear. "You're different from others," she said suddenly, her voice hesitant. He looked at her, curious. "You're the first man who didn't hurt me," she admitted softly, almost in disbelief. "Everyone else, Her voice faltered and she looked down at her hands, unsure how to continue. He didn't interrupt or try to fill the silence. He simply nodded, acknowledging her words without judgment or explanation. His quiet presence spoke louder than any words could. For the first time, she realized that someone could see her pain without taking advantage of it. Someone could offer safety without expecting repayment. Over the following days, their connection deepened. She began to participate more actively in ranch life, learning to milk the cows, tend the garden, and even ride a horse. The rancher continued to guide her patiently, celebrating small successes without making her feel pressured. She discovered a sense of competence she hadn't felt in years, the quiet pride of mastering tasks through patience and effort. Evenings became times of gentle conversation, where they shared stories from their pasts in small, careful doses. She spoke of her fears, her struggles, and the moments when life had seemed unbearably heavy. He listened without interruption, offering understanding and occasional wisdom, but never pushing or judging. Each conversation built trust, a bridge over the chasm of her fear and past trauma. One night, as they watched the stars emerge in the clear sky, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had come to the ranch expecting suspicion and perhaps danger, but she had found patience, understanding, and kindness. She realized that trust was not something given all at once. It was built slowly, carefully, through actions that proved reliability and care. And here, on this quiet ranch, she had begun to understand that trust was possible once more. By the end of the second week, she moved through her days with less fear and more confidence. She smiled more freely, laughed at the small joys around her, and even began to anticipate the simple routines of ranch life. The rancher never forced her to do anything beyond her comfort, and yet, through his gentle encouragement, she had begun to reclaim a part of herself that had long been buried under layers of fear. And so, each day passed quietly, yet significantly. Through small gestures, kind words, and patient guidance, the woman learned that the world could be gentle, that people could be trustworthy, and that safety was not just a dream but a tangible reality she could inhabit. She realized that this was not the end of her journey, but a beginning, the first steps toward healing, trust, and perhaps even happiness. And every time she saw the rancher's patient, steady presence, she felt the quiet reassurance that, for the first time in years, she could be herself without fear. The mornings at the ranch had grown familiar and comforting. She woke to the soft light spilling through the window, the distant lowing of cows, and the gentle rustle of wind in the trees. Each day she found herself adjusting to the rhythm of life on the ranch, feeding the animals, collecting eggs, tending the garden, and learning small chores that made her feel useful and capable. Yet beneath the calm of daily routine, there was a quiet storm of memories she could not easily dismiss. Her past, filled with pain and betrayal, still lingered at the edges of her mind, whispering fears she was slowly learning to confront. It was on a cool afternoon, while sitting on the porch repairing a broken fence, that the weight of those memories became too heavy to ignore. The rancher worked beside her, his hands steady and sure as he hammered and measured, making the work feel simple and manageable. She wanted to speak, to share something from deep inside, but words had always been tricky. Speaking about her past meant reliving moments of hurt, moments that she had buried under layers of silence. I think I want to tell you something, she said quietly, almost afraid to break the calm of the afternoon. He paused, putting down his tools and turning to her with a gentle, encouraging smile. Whenever you're ready, he said softly. No rush. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she clasped them together. I've been hurt, she admitted. By people I trusted, people I thought cared about me, and I always expected it to happen again. I didn't think I could ever feel safe with anyone. Her voice faltered, and she looked down at her hands, ashamed of the vulnerability she was showing. The rancher didn't interrupt. He simply listened, letting her words flow, offering only the quiet presence that said he was there, that he understood without judgment. It was the first time in years that someone had truly heard her, not just the words, but the fear, the hurt, and the hope hidden beneath them. I know it's hard to trust after everything you've been through, he said gently, but you're here now, you're safe. You don't have to prove anything and you don't have to hide anymore. Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, wanted to accept the calm reassurance in his words, but fear still lingered. Trust was not something she could give easily. It had to be earned over time. Yet she felt a spark of something new, something fragile but growing, a sense that maybe, just maybe, she could allow herself to hope. Over the next few days, she found herself opening up in small ways. She told him about the farm she had visited as a child, the way she loved animals, and the small joys she had once known but had long forgotten. She shared moments of sadness, carefully chosen memories that hinted at her pain without overwhelming her. The rancher responded with patience, gentle understanding, and encouragement, never pushing, never questioning, simply acknowledging her feelings and offering comfort. One afternoon, while they were tending to the garden together, a memory surfaced that brought tears to her eyes. She paused, brushing a hand across her cheek, trying to hide the emotion. The rancher noticed and placed a careful, respectful hand near hers, not touching but offering silent support. You can cry if you need to, he said softly. It's okay to feel. She hesitated, then allowed herself to let the tears flow. It felt strange and foreign, but also relieving, as though a small weight had been lifted from her chest. She had carried so much pain for so long, always hiding it, always bracing for another blow. And yet here, on this quiet ranch, she realized that her tears were not a weakness, they were a part of healing. That evening they sat by the fire in the main house, the warm glow of the flames reflecting in their eyes. She spoke quietly about the moments when she had felt most alone, the times when she had doubted that kindness or safety could exist. The rancher listened, never interrupting, never judging. His calm presence made it possible for her to speak, to finally put words to feelings she had carried silently for years. You're stronger than you know, he said after a long pause. The fact that you're here, sharing this, shows courage. She looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. She had always associated courage with fighting back, with surviving alone. But now she realized that courage could also mean allowing someone in, showing vulnerability and trusting again. Days turned into weeks, and the woman found herself slowly confronting more of her past. She talked about the moments when she had felt powerless, the mistakes she had made, and the people who had hurt her. Each time she shared, the rancher responded with empathy and reassurance, never diminishing her experiences or dismissing her feelings. Slowly, she began to see that her past did not have to define her, that healing was possible even after years of pain. One evening, while they were watching the sunset over the fields, she reflected on how far she had come. Just weeks ago, she had arrived at the ranch frightened and unsure, expecting harm at every turn. Now, she felt a cautious sense of peace. She could laugh at small things, enjoy the rhythm of daily life, and even imagine a future where trust was not impossible. You've changed, the rancher said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "I think I have," she replied softly. I feel like I can breathe again." "Like I can hope," the rancher nodded, his eyes kind. "Hope is a powerful thing. It can heal even the deepest wounds if you let it." She smiled faintly, a small but genuine expression. She realized that she had begun to trust, not just him but herself, her own ability to navigate the world without constant fear. Trust was not something given all at once. It was built slowly, through small actions, patience, and understanding. And here she had found all three. As the days continued, their bond grew stronger. They worked side by side in the fields, tended to the animals, and shared quiet moments in the evenings. Each gesture, each conversation, reinforced the growing trust between them. She learned that safety could exist without strings attached, that kindness could be offered without expectation, and that a person could care without causing harm. One afternoon, a sudden storm rolled over the ranch. Rain pelted the windows, wind howled through the trees, and lightning flashed across the sky. She felt a flicker of fear, the old reflex rising in her chest, but the rancher remained calm and composed. He guided her inside, ensured the animals were safe, and quietly reassured her that everything would be fine. Watching him navigate the storm with steady hands and calm words, she realized that he was more than just a kind presence. He was someone she could rely on, someone who would protect her without expecting anything in return. By the end of the third week, the woman felt a transformation within herself. She laughed more freely, spoke more openly, and even began to imagine a life where fear was no longer the central theme. She realized that healing was not instant. It was a gradual process, built through small moments of trust, understanding, and patience. One quiet evening, as they sat on the porch watching the stars emerge, she turned to the rancher. I think I'm ready to let go of some of the fear," she said softly. He smiled, a warm and reassuring smile. "That's all any of us can do, take it one step at a time, and I'll be here every step of the way." She felt a surge of gratitude, the kind that comes not from grand gestures, but from consistent, quiet presence. She realized that she could finally allow herself to believe that not everyone in the world wanted to hurt her. That sometimes people could be patient, kind, and understanding without expecting anything in return. And for the first time in years, she felt a sense of true connection, not just with the rancher, but with the possibility of life beyond fear. She knew there would still be challenges, moments when old fears might rise, and days when the past would feel heavy. But now she had discovered a foundation on which to stand, a place where she could heal, grow, and learn to trust again. The rancher's presence had become a quiet anchor in her life. He never forced her to speak before she was ready, never imposed his will, and never judged her for her cautiousness. Instead, he offered patience, understanding, and steady kindness. And through this, she began to reclaim a part of herself that had been lost, her ability to trust, to hope, and to imagine a life that was not defined by pain. As the night deepened, she looked out at the vast, quiet fields. The moon cast a soft glow, illuminating the land in silver light. She felt a quiet sense of peace settle within her, a feeling she had long thought impossible. For the first time, she understood that healing was not about forgetting the past, but about learning to live with it in a way that allowed life and hope to return. And in that quiet moment, under the watchful stars, she whispered to herself, maybe I can finally trust again. Life on the ranch had begun to feel like something she could finally call her own. Each morning, she woke with the sun casting its warm glow across the fields, and each evening, she watched as it sank slowly below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold. She had come to understand the rhythm of ranch life, the gentle, steady cycle of caring for animals, tending to the land, and moving through each day with purpose. It was a simple life, yet it was full, and for the first time she realized that simplicity could be a kind of happiness. The bond between her and the rancher had grown quietly, without the need for words to define it. Their companionship was built on shared moments, small gestures, and consistent patience. He taught her to ride horses properly, showing her how to trust the animal and trust herself at the same time. At first she was hesitant, clinging tightly to the reins, her body stiff with fear. But with his calm instructions and steady presence beside her, she began to relax. The horses, sensing her growing confidence, responded with gentle obedience. When she finally managed to guide a horse across the pasture on her own, a smile spread across her face, radiant with pride and accomplishment. "You're getting really good at this," the rancher said, his voice carrying genuine admiration. She felt a warmth in her chest, one that had little to do with the sun or the exercise, and more to do with recognition. For years she had doubted herself, constantly second-guessing her abilities and feeling small in a world that seemed determined to remind her of her limitations. And now she discovered that she could succeed, that she could master something, and that she could even enjoy it. The animals themselves became a source of comfort and connection. She spoke to them softly, learning their habits and personalities. The cows recognized her voice and approached her calmly. The chickens waited patiently for her to feed them, and even the youngest calf followed her around with an innocent curiosity that brought unexpected joy. Caring for them was not merely a task, it was a lesson in patience, compassion, and attentiveness. She began to see that nurturing something outside herself could be profoundly healing. Even the chores she had once found tedious became enjoyable in their own way. Tending the garden, raking hay, repairing fences, all these tasks were small acts of care that gave her a sense of purpose. She realized that work done with care and attention could be rewarding, not burdensome. Each completed task brought a small sense of pride and a quiet satisfaction that she had long forgotten existed. Beyond the chores, there were the quiet moments they shared. On warm afternoons, they would sit together on the porch, watching the clouds drift lazily across the sky. Sometimes they spoke, and sometimes they simply enjoyed the silence, listening to the wind in the trees or the distant call of a bird. In these moments, she felt a deep connection not only with the rancher but with the world around her, a sense of being present, of belonging, and of finally being safe. One evening, while preparing dinner, she found herself laughing at a small accident, a spilled bowl of soup and a clumsy chicken that had jumped onto the table. The rancher chuckled beside her, and for the first time she laughed freely without reservation. It was a laugh that came from the heart, unguarded and pure. She realized how long it had been since she had allowed herself to feel joy, how many years had passed under the weight of fear and mistrust. And now, she discovered that laughter could be part of her life again. As the days turned into weeks, their relationship grew deeper. It was not a relationship built on grand declarations or dramatic gestures. It was built on steady presence, trust, and shared experiences. The rancher never pushed her beyond her comfort, never demanded more than she could give, and never judged her for the walls she had once built around herself. In return, she began to open up more freely, sharing her thoughts, hopes, and even small dreams for the future. One afternoon, while they were repairing a section of fence near the edge of the pasture, she paused and looked out at the land stretching before them. The golden light of the sun bathed the fields in warmth, and she felt a profound sense of peace. "I never thought I could feel like this," she said quietly, almost to herself. The rancher looked at her, his expression gentle. "Like what? Peace, like I belong somewhere," she admitted. "I've spent so long running, hiding, being afraid, and now I feel safe and happy." "I didn't think I could feel happy again," he nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes it takes time, but the important thing is that you're here now and you're allowing yourself to feel it. That's the first step." She smiled faintly, a small but genuine expression of gratitude and understanding. She had spent so long expecting pain, so long preparing herself for disappointment, that accepting happiness felt almost foreign. Yet in the quiet companionship of the rancher and the steady rhythm of the ranch, she was learning that joy could exist without fear. The animals, chores, and quiet routines were not the only sources of comfort. She began to notice the subtle ways in which the rancher showed care. He remembered which animals she enjoyed working with the most, prepared meals that she liked, and offered small, thoughtful words of encouragement when she succeeded. These gestures were not grand, but they spoke volumes. They demonstrated patience, attentiveness, and respect, qualities she had rarely encountered in others. One rainy afternoon, as the storm raged outside, they sat together in the barn, listening to the steady patter of rain on the roof. She felt the warmth of the hay beneath her, the gentle presence of the rancher beside her, and a profound sense of calm. She realized that life could be steady and safe, even in the midst of chaos outside. It was a lesson she had not expected to learn so fully, that security and trust were not only possible, but deeply nourishing to the soul. Her confidence continued to grow. She learned to ride horses confidently, tend to the animals without hesitation, and complete tasks efficiently. Each accomplishment, no matter how small, reinforced her sense of self-worth. She realized that she was capable, strong, and resilient. And more importantly, she recognized that she deserved kindness, care, and safety, things she had long believed were beyond her reach. Evenings were often the most rewarding. They would sit together under the stars, sharing quiet conversations about life, nature, and small dreams for the future. She began to share stories from her past, not the painful ones, but the memories that made her smile, that reminded her of who she was before fear took hold. The rancher listened attentively, offering encouragement and gentle reflections that helped her see her own strength and resilience. One night, as they watched the moon rise above the fields, she realized how much she had changed. The fear that had once dominated her life had been replaced by a cautious optimism. The constant tension in her shoulders had softened, and she could breathe more freely. She had begun to trust, not blindly but carefully with awareness, and that trust had become the foundation for a life that felt fuller, safer, and more meaningful. She also began to recognize that she was not alone. The rancher's presence had become a steady support, a source of quiet reassurance. He never demanded more than she could give, never questioned her boundaries, and never judged her for the caution she had developed over years of hardship. Through his patience, she learned that trust could be rebuilt, that companionship could be gentle, and that human connection could exist without harm. Over time, she allowed herself to enjoy the small pleasures of ranch life, the warmth of the sun on her face, the feel of soft hay beneath her hands, the gentle nuzzle of a calf, the sound of wind through the trees. She discovered that life could be beautiful in simple ways, that joy could be found in ordinary moments, and that safety and care were not privileges, but something she could embrace and hold. By the end of the month, she realized that the ranch had become more than a place to rest. It was a home. The work, the animals, the land, and the steady presence of the rancher had created a sense of belonging she had never known. She felt a deep gratitude for the patient, quiet ways in which he had welcomed her, guided her, and allowed her to rebuild trust. And in the quiet of the evening, as she sat on the porch watching the sunset with him, she realized something remarkable. She could be happy again. She could feel joy, security, and belonging. And she could trust, not only in the rancher but in herself, in her ability to navigate life with courage, care, and hope. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future unburdened by fear, filled with possibility, and illuminated by the gentle light of patience, trust, and companionship. The seasons on the ranch had begun to shift, each day bringing subtle changes that mirrored the transformation within her. The mornings were crisp, and the air carried the faint scent of dew and earth. She woke each day with a sense of purpose and a quiet anticipation, no longer weighed down by fear or the lingering shadows of her past. Life had become a rhythm of simple joys, steady work, and companionship that offered her something she had thought was impossible: peace. She moved through her days with confidence and ease. Tending to the animals had become second nature. She knew the cows by their gentle eyes and patient movements, recognized the chickens by their unique clucks, and watched over the calves with a sense of responsibility that gave her pride. Each task completed, each small success, built not only her skills but her sense of self-worth. For the first time in years, she felt capable in a way that was deep and sustaining. The rancher continued to be a steady presence in her life, but now their relationship had grown into something that transcended simple companionship. There was a quiet understanding between them, a connection built over weeks of patience, shared work, and open hearts. They did not need words for every feeling. Sometimes a glance, a small gesture, or a shared laugh said more than anything else could. She had learned to trust him, but more importantly, she had learned to trust herself, to believe that she deserved safety, kindness, and care. One morning, as they worked together in the garden, she paused to admire the neat rows of vegetables, the rich soil, and the subtle beauty of nature thriving under their hands. "It's amazing," she said softly. "I never thought I could enjoy something like this so much." The rancher glanced at her with a smile. "It's the little things that often matter most," he said. "The work, the care, the attention you give, it all comes together to create something worth cherishing." She nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest. She had once believed that life was full only of challenges to survive, that joy was fleeting and safety impossible. But now she understood that patience, care, and consistency could create a life of quiet, steady fulfillment. As the day unfolded, she found herself laughing more freely, sharing her thoughts openly, and embracing the small victories that life on the ranch offered. She rode horses across the fields with confidence, tended to animals without fear, and completed chores with a sense of accomplishment. Each act reinforced the trust she had built, not just in the rancher but in herself. She realized that she could thrive in a life that was steady, simple, and filled with purpose. Evenings had become a time of reflection and connection. Sitting on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon, she would watch the sky painted in shades of orange, pink, and gold. Sometimes they spoke of the day's work, sometimes of dreams for the future, and sometimes they simply sat in comfortable silence, letting the quiet of the ranch speak for itself. These moments of calm had become treasures, opportunities to feel safe, connected, and fully alive. One evening she turned to the rancher, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the sunset. "I've realized something," she said quietly. "I feel like I belong here, like this is home." The rancher nodded, his expression gentle and sincere. "Home is not just a place. It's the people, the connections, and the sense of safety you feel. You've found that here, and you've built it for yourself as well." Her chest tightened with emotion. For so long, she had wandered through life carrying only fear, never trusting that she could truly belong anywhere. And now, here on this ranch, she had found that sense of belonging, not because someone told her she could, but because she had allowed herself to accept it. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, her sense of hope and renewal grew stronger. She began to imagine a future that was not dictated by past pain, but shaped by choices, care, and connection. She thought about the possibilities of continuing life on the ranch, nurturing the land, caring for the animals, and building a life filled with steady, meaningful work. And she knew that, whatever challenges might arise, she had the resilience and support to face them. The bond with the rancher had deepened in quiet, meaningful ways. He continued to guide her, not with authority but with gentle encouragement. He celebrated her successes, reassured her when doubt arose, and remained a patient, steady presence. She learned to appreciate his subtle acts of kindness, The way he remembered small details, anticipated needs, and created an environment where she could grow without fear. Each gesture, though simple, carried profound meaning. One afternoon, a young calf stumbled and fell while trying to follow her across the field. She rushed forward instinctively, her heart pounding, and helped it to its feet. The rancher watched silently, then nodded with approval. "You handled that well," he said. "It's moments like these that show how far you've come." She smiled, a soft, genuine expression of pride and satisfaction. She realized that strength did not always come from fighting or enduring pain. It could come from care, patience, and gentle action. And she had discovered that strength within herself, nurtured by the safe, steady rhythm of life on the ranch. Evenings became times of quiet reflection. She would sit by the fire in the main house, thinking about how far she had come. She remembered the fear and distrust that had accompanied her arrival, the way she had guarded herself against every word, every gesture, every person. And now she saw how those walls had slowly come down, brick by brick, replaced with trust, hope, and the quiet assurance that life could be kind. The rancher's presence had been central to this transformation, but she also recognized her own role. She had chosen to allow herself to be vulnerable, to take small steps toward trust, and to embrace the possibilities of a life beyond fear. She realized that healing was not something that happened instantly. It was built through patience, consistency, and care, both from others and from oneself. One night, as the sky sparkled with stars, she spoke quietly to the rancher. "I never thought I could feel this peaceful. I thought life would always be about fear, about looking over my shoulder, about surviving. But now I feel free." He smiled softly. "Freedom comes when we let go of the past and allow ourselves to live fully in the present. You've earned this peace and you deserve it." Her heart swelled with gratitude. For so long, she had believed that happiness and safety were beyond her reach. Now, she realized that they were possible and that she had a hand in creating them. The ranch, the animals, the steady routine, and the gentle companionship of the rancher had combined to form a foundation on which she could build a future filled with hope. The days continued in this gentle, steady rhythm. She continued to care for the animals, work the land, and grow in confidence and skill. She found joy in small moments: the first light of dawn, the sound of a calf's soft nuzzle, the warmth of the sun on her face. Each day reinforced the sense of belonging and purpose she had begun to feel. And through it all, she realized something profound. Life could be gentle, safe, and fulfilling. Trust could be rebuilt, hope could grow, and joy could return, even after years of pain. The rancher had shown her that kindness could exist without expectation, that patience could heal wounds, and that connection could be a source of strength rather than vulnerability. One evening, as they watched the sunset together, she felt a sense of completion. She had arrived at the ranch weary, fearful, and guarded. Now she felt strong, capable, and at peace. She had reclaimed her sense of self, discovered the power of trust, and learned that a life filled with kindness and companionship was not only possible but within her grasp. She turned to the rancher, her eyes reflecting the soft hues of the sunset. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything, for your patience, your kindness, for showing me that I can trust again." He nodded, his expression warm and sincere. "You did all the work. I only helped you see what was possible. You allowed yourself to heal, to grow, and to believe in a better life. That's what makes this real." She smiled, a smile that was calm, confident, and full of hope. She understood that healing was a journey, not a destination, but she was ready to continue that journey with courage and trust. The ranch, the animals, and the steady companionship of the rancher had given her a life she could embrace fully, without fear or hesitation. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, she felt a profound sense of gratitude and peace. For the first time in years, she knew that she was truly safe, truly cared for, and truly capable of living a life filled with hope, joy, and purpose. She had arrived at the ranch broken and weary, but she would leave, or rather, continue her life, whole, healed, and ready to face the future with courage and trust. The ranch was no longer just a place. It was home. And in that home, she had discovered something she had long thought impossible, that life could be kind, trust could be rebuilt, and hope could flourish again. She rested her head back, taking a deep breath of the cool night air, and whispered softly to herself, "I am safe. I am whole, I can live, and I am free."